everyone, it's Megan from Imagine That and More, and today I'm in my studio and I'm getting ready to quilt this, I call it my Irish grandfather quilt. It's actually the Peeking Points pattern and I love it, and I picked all these fabrics. I wanted it to look a little more manly anyway, and I love the plaids and the greens and the golds and all of that. So anyway, I wanted to show you what I'm working on, and I'm trying to pick my design for the free motion. And I decided I wanted this kind of more crochet looking pattern in the border, but I'm actually going to try out a couple of different things because I'm trying to decide, do I break my border down into 2 rows of 2 1/4 inch rows or 3 1 7/8. So I'm trying to decide how long it's going to take and how dense the quilting is going to be. So I'm actually going to go over to my tira. Right now, when I quilted, it's going to be on my long arm, but I'm going to go over to my tira and I'm going to attempt to try out the different designs at the different sizes, and I'm going to record it. Actually, I'm going to record my time so I know how long it will take so that I can add up the time around this entire border for this quilt and find out if I want the investment of doing the smaller crochet. So I'll be showing you my process as I go along. So now I'm sitting at my tira, and what I've done is I've drawn myself some little highway lines here. So you can see these two are drawn at 2 1/4 and then divided into 1 7/8 because I'm gonna be doing the leaves kind of around the center, so I wanted to mark it. And then these 3 are drawn at 1 7/8 and divided in half because the border, if I'm gonna do it smaller, I have to do 3 rows. So this way I'm gonna time myself and I'm gonna see how long it takes me. I didn't have any of the wool batting that I'm using, so I just doubled up some batting on a scrap that I have. And I've decided to use a variegated thread because I'm going to be using a variegated thread when I do it on my actual quilt. So I wanted to get a chance to see the design variegated. And then I picked one that's a little bit darker because I want you to be able to see what I do. So let's get started and see what happens. So you can see that I just got done quilting the first row, the larger 2. So we have them here. See how cute that looks? They say if something looks good drawn, it's gonna look way better when you quilt it. And I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. So here we have it. And I did this first run and I actually timed even dividing up and doing my lines, because when it comes down to it, that's a big part of it, because if I do the smaller design, I actually have to do more dividing lines and more marking. So that adds a lot of time to what you're doing. So in order to get an accurate view of it, I decided to time going up and down my lines. And I had to actually go up and then kind of retrace because you can see that my leaves are going in one direction. So I had to work from the same spot and then go back down and make another set. So the time for this was 6 minutes and 19 seconds. And I really like it. Get it back so you can see how big it is. But it looks a lot like when you crochet with those jumbo yarns, and you get that nice big fluffy pattern. And I really like it, but I'm also a little concerned because I want it to look like a sweater. But if I do it within the 3 rows, we'll get a chance to see if it just ends up being over quilted and I lose some of the puffy feeling that I want in my quilt. So I'm excited about doing this process and making some decisions before I jump in to one of my favorite quilts I've ever made. I've created my sample, I had my quilting fun, and now I want to show you the results. So I timed myself, and the 2 rows here took me 6 minutes and 19 seconds, and it's approximately 12 inches long, maybe a tiny bit more. And then the 3 rows, I super love them because they have that crocheted look. They're both puffy, but it's going to be even puffier when it hits the wool. this took me 8 minutes and 50 seconds for the same amount of space. And then I did my math. So this gets a little bit confusing, but 8 minutes and 50 seconds, I multiplied it times 60 so I could get the seconds, 530 seconds to do 12 running inches on my border. And since my quilt is 90 inches by 90 inches, I pretty much just multiplied that by 4. It gives me a little more because of the corners, but corners take longer, so I feel okay with saying that it's 360 running inches. And then I divided that by 12 inches so that I know how many 12-inch segments I'm going to get in order to figure out the time. And that came to 30. So I'm doing 30 12-inch segments in order to go all the way around my border. And I multiplied that times my 530 seconds that it took me, and I have 15,900 seconds. Well, we want to know more than seconds. So we're going to divide that by 60, and that's going to give us 265 minutes. Divided by 60 equals 4.41 minutes. 265 minutes divided by 60 gives us the hours, which is 4.41 hours, which comes to, that's kind of hard to see, comes to 4 hours and 25 minutes. And that's if I do the 3 rows. And then for the 2 rows, it takes me a little bit less. It takes me 6 minutes and 19 seconds for 12 inches. And that ends up, we go through all of the same math, and we end up with 3 hours and 9 minutes, which the difference between the two is an hour and 15 minutes in order to just do the borders. So I have to make a decision as to whether I like the 3 rows enough to spend an hour and 15 minutes of my time. And actually, when it all comes down to, I think it's going to be a little bit more because I did not add into the equation the marking time. So if I'm going to do 3 rows, it's going to take me longer to mark than it is the 2. And this time might be, the overall time might be a little bit less because once I get quilting, I tend to go faster and faster. And I actually, when I'm on my Millie, this is Millie, she's my long arm, my APQS long arm, and she's the one that I'm going to be doing it on. I'm actually quilting faster when I'm on my long arm. I just kind of get into the groove. So I'm going to fast forward and show you what I decided. I actually decided I wanted the 2 rows because I didn't want to invest the time. And in retrospect, I'm really excited because I love the absolute puffiness of it. Now, the thing I'm not excited about was the thread color that I chose, because I chose a variegated thread that had a lot of red in it. I think it's a little hard for you to see, but the red on the green is what pops out, so you really see red stitching. And I decided that the quilt was for me. I was going to switch my thread after doing some of the border. So as I go down a little bit, I switched to a variegated thread that had a little more green in it and less red. And I decided that was okay because this is for me. And I wanted to show you a couple of the other decisions that I made as well. In this blue border, I decided to do what I call my signature stitch. It's kind of like bouncing balls. And I just love this because I create all my circles going all the way down one direction. And then I come back and I just do these loops. And it's fun and it's puffy. So it's probably not like the best choice for the quilt, but I decided I really liked it and I wanted the puffiness. And then I stitched in the ditch on the smaller border and just left it. So overall, when I decided to quilt this, I made some decisions, and one of them was that I really wanted to densely quilt it. It's got wool batting, so it's puffy, but I pushed down some of that, and I wanted it to be very textural. So every time I went into a block, I decided to make it kind of a sampler. I did a lot of outlining the different designs, changed up. But look at this, isn't this really cool? So I wanted it to kind of look like it was a bunch of different materials pushed together, scrappy, fun. So I made a lot of different decisions. But overall, I decided that it was worthwhile to spend the time to make it very densely quilted, so that I get that old man sweater look that I was going for. So as we get started, I noticed on the video that it looked almost as if I had done 3 rows, but in actuality, when I came down, I did my stitch in the ditch, I went over a 1/2 inch, a little over a 1/2 inch, and I did a line. And that made my border a little more doable. And then I did the same thing on the other side. I went over a 1/2 inch plus my 1/4 inch where I'm gonna bind. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay down a 1/2 inch seam. As you can see, I did it on the left side. I'm gonna do it now on the right side. Pull up my thread, give myself a little bit of a stay stitch. Now, I'm lucky because I've got a plaid here, so I'm just gonna literally follow this line down. And you'll notice I have a lot of puffiness because I'm getting near the end of my quilt. As I get near the end of the quilt, you tend to have a little bit more puffiness, and we've got all this bulk from the wool. Now, I also I didn't do a lot of marking because I'm using these lines as we go, and I'm realizing this is my center, and I'm going between here. So this is basically halfway for my first leaf. And I'm working in a regulated stitch. So you can see as I work, it's gonna stop and go. You can stop. So now I've made just a couple of markings so I can remember which lines I'm gonna follow. So this is my center point. And I like to work so the leaves are going this direction. You could probably go either way, but it just makes a lot more sense in my mind. The first one I have to work backwards so I can go up my line a little bit. So I'm gonna do my curve, another curve, and back down. And I'm gonna just keep making little leaves until I get to the point where And once I get into the roll of it, I actually like to take it out of regulated and do it in manual, but it takes me a minute to get into the rhythm. So that's why I was using the regulated, but I don't like the sound of regulated. And I feel like I actually work a little bit faster when the rhythm of the machine is going in manual. So I'm gonna show you that. I've started on the second row, and I'm not that worried if all of my little leaves are exactly the same, because I wanted to have a handmade crocheted sort of look to it. So I'm eyeballing it a little bit, but I'm following the center line. And one thing I wanted to address when I spoke about changing my threads to here you can see it's a variegated without any red in it, but I had originally started one that had red. I actually chose to keep my bobbin thread the same throughout. So I'm using a different color on my bobbin than I am on my top quilting. And you can see the back of the quilt. I'm gonna walk around. You can see that it still has quite a bit of red in it. because I liked how it looked on the cork. So when you're using a variegated thread, you're not gonna match up exactly anyway. So I didn't feel that it would be a problem as far as tension goes if I continued with the thread that had some red in it. So I'm just gonna keep quilting and get this done and show you what it looks like. Oftentimes when I'm trying to decide what design to do, I play off of whatever's happening in the fabric. So I'm getting ready to do this batik, which I think is so beautiful, with the pebbles. And if it's nice printed, it's gonna look even better quilted because we can get those to puff up. And you can see the difference. You know, this creates a great texture, but here it is before it's quilted. So that's how puffy the wool is. So we're kind of pressing it down a little bit so you get that nice ridged feel afterwards. So I'm just gonna trace these pebbles and I'm gonna go around and finish this out. And as you can see, when I did this, I echoed the flowers, get a nice little puff, echoed them and did a little bit of echoing on the leaves. And it's really just that simple. So you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of times your fabric will talk to you about what it wants you to do, and you're just trying to enhance what's already there. So let me go ahead and do these pebbles. I'm doing a design, sometimes I look at the fabrics and I know what I want to quilt, and other times I don't. So in this particular case, I skipped a couple of blocks until the inspiration gets me. So I'm going to actually trace back up here. I'm going to follow some of my lines, and I had forgotten to do the little echo on my diamond shape, my throwing star or whatever it is. And you can kind of watch me go up, and then I'll be filling in this blank border here. So I thought you could just follow me up there. Now I'm gonna put it in a regulated stitch, because otherwise I will have quite a dilemma. And I did these so they're about a ½ an inch from the corner. So when I go up, I'm gonna be setting my ruler so that I have enough space and following it. And then I'll end up about a ½ an inch again, and I can set my ruler. See, it's hitting the 1/4 inch line here, and then about a 1/4 of an inch away from the corner there. So you can tell on this one I went a little bit farther out than I did on the others, but ultimately I don't think it's gonna matter. What stands out is the area that's not quilted, and you get this really nice puffiness there. And then I'm gonna echo some of these, and I've decided that I'm not going to use a ruler for this because I want it to have kind of more of a hand sketchy look. You've got a little bit more of a Sasha Coke type of running stitch there. So. And the parts that I don't quilt are the parts that are gonna puff up. So in this case, I really want these squares to puff up. So I'm gonna have my stitching go around them. And this is also really good practice for me to see how straight of a line I can do without my ruler, because I like to challenge myself. And since the stitching isn't really going to show up that much except for on the back, it gives me a little more leeway. I'll double this line so you get a little bit of more purposeful stitching there. And I had actually skipped. I did my vertical lines here, but I skipped, so I'm going to go back into this one, which will then take me into these borders as well. And this one's the same thing. The lines here aren't straight, so I'm going to be following the fabric and not worrying whether my lines are straight. And I'm doing these pretty random because I just want to create a texture. I'm not worried about the pattern being perfect, because you're really not even going to see the pattern. You're just going to be able to see and feel this texture. And when I use this quilt and I curl up on it, I personally just like to run my fingers across it and feel what kind of textures we got. I think it distinguishes the fabrics even more when they have different textures based on the quilting that I put into it. We're getting really puffy here, so I'm gonna put another one. And we've got to put some vertical lines. Miss that. Slide it off a little bit. And I like my patterns to be complementary of each other and not always the same. So the fact that I've used a linear pattern here means that when I go in to the green one, I'm going to use something that's more swirly. And that's actually when I pieced my quilt, that's something that I kept in mind. I try to pick fabrics that aren't all the same. So I didn't use all my plaids and stripes next to each other, but I tried to position them so I have kind of a more like a small swirl here next to a plaid, next to one that's soft, but it's a bigger fabric, and it has also the contrast of color and value. So that's something I also keep in mind. It's the same design principle, but I'm carrying it over into my free motion quilting. So here I'm going to do some nice swirlies, and this is what I love to do. This is another one of probably my signatures, is just to kind of play and have fun and do leaves and swirls or whatever makes me happy. So I'm going to put it back in manual. So I'm kind of taking this design and I'm just exaggerating it. Like the back of the swirls, and here's another kind of leafy part. really nice because the thread blends in so well, and the variegated just gives you kind of highlights and shadows. And I don't worry if I put myself kind of into a corner, I just trace back over my lines. But I do like to do stitch in the ditch first, so I'm going to stop right here and put it in regulated and outline this. Then I'm going to go back to doing my fun swirls. So I'm not worried about, outlining this perfectly. I'm just letting the fabric kind of inspire me. And I think the more free my lines are and flowing, the less the viewer is going to question whether I was doing the right thing. Because you can tell I was just having fun, and it becomes just a part of the fabric. I think as soon as we start getting timid and questioning ourselves, that's what people pick up on. And then we look unsure about what we're doing. It's more of a fake it till you make it sort of thing. Now I'm going to go back in here, and I want it to be a lot more linear. So I'm going back into my regulated stitch. And I'm just going to echo some of these diagonals, because I haven't really done any diagonals in a while. And you can tell on this quilt, not everything's perfect. I'm not worried about it. This is a quilt for me. It's not a show quilt by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm trying to decide, and I do this a lot, I'll get halfway through design and decide whether I want this to be diagonal or if I want to actually do the crosses. And I'm thinking I want a little more dense texture here because I haven't done that in a while. So I'm going to do the cross lines going the other direction as well. That just gives it a really different look, because now you're actually seeing dark, so it's almost as if we added a whole nother line quality to the fabric. So I'm gonna actually break my thread at this point. Hi everyone, we finally finished our Irish grandpa quilt, and I wanted to show you the effect of it. So we have it laying here on the table, and kind of get an idea of what it looks like finished, bound. There we go. This is the back of the quilt. I was happy with it. It's so soft, and it's gonna be very cuddly, and I'm proud of myself because I actually put a label on it. And as much as I yell at people for not putting labels on their quilts, every once in a while I don't either. Don't tell anyone. But it's really important because we actually have found many a quilt at a thrift store with no label, which breaks my heart because I want to hear the story behind it. You can see the whole thing. So remember when I told you several times in the video that this quilt was for me and it was for my bed and it wasn't going to be a show quilt? So now I kind of have to eat my words, because when I went to submit my subway tile quilt into the Quilt Expo 2022, trying to get it in, I was able to make 2 submissions. So I thought, what the heck? I'll just try submitting the grandpa quilt. Only 50 quilts get accepted, and actually both of them got accepted. So today is kind of a bittersweet as we send off the grandpa quilt, hand it over for quite a while. So you won't be seeing it in the shop, but if you want to come see it in Tennessee, Cincinnati, I can't remember where else they're going, maybe Florida, you can go visit it there. Do you want to flip? Yesterday we put, Sharon Zacharias showed me how to put the hanger on it. So you get a little hanger there so they can hang the quilt. I do think this quilt's gonna actually be so much better after I wash it. When it comes home, we're gonna wash it. It'll be nice and soft with the wool batting. So unfortunately for my husband and I, we're not gonna be quite as warm this winter because our quilt will be on tour, but we're excited, very, very excited. Thanks for sharing this adventure with us. And as always, come in and see us at Imagine That and More. Bye.